Welcome to Felony Miami, where we have real conversation with real people about the justice system in the USA.
Well, it's early on in the morning, then when I ride, Lordy mama. Well, it's early in the morning, then when I ride. Well, it's early in the morning, then when I ride, Lordy baby. Help me, help me, help me, on my right side.
On Valentines Day 2018, one of the world's deadliest school shootings took place at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. 17 students and teachers were killed, and millions traumatized as the nation watched in horror while it all unfolded on television. In response, a student movement emerged via a hashtag, Never Again, and its proponents used the media attention around it to promote an activist narrative about changing gun laws and challenging lawmakers for their beholden support of the NRA. Today on Felony Miami, we explore what happened that tragic day. On today's program, we're joined by Marjory Stoneman Douglas teacher, who was on campus during the shooting, and he shares with us what he and his students experienced during the attack and the feelings they felt on their first day back on campus together since the tragic events took place. And we also welcome a former state representative with a U.S. Army background and an award-winning investigative journalist to our panel. Without truth, there is no justice. And where there is injustice for one, there is injustice for all. Welcome to Felony Miami. Let's air it out. Welcome back to Felony Miami. I'm your host. My name is Joe Stone. On today's show, we have three guests. We have Francisco Alvarado, who is an investigative journalist, and he does investigative work for Reuters, the Washington Post, Florida Bulldog Magazine, and
Vice.
Yes. Nice.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the show. We also have Daisy Baez, former Florida state representative from the Democratic Party. Welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here.
Thank you so much. And we have Mr. Chris Mattox, communications director for FDF Global and an English teacher at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, the high school that was just involved in a horrible attack and tragedy here in Parkland, Florida. Welcome to the show, Chris.
I'm glad to be here.
I'm happy you're here.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump right in. Today was your guys' first day back to school since the shooting.
First day back with students.
First day back.
We had been back since last week, Friday. Students came today, and it was a long day, but it was a good day. It was, the kids were in great spirits, which was good because we had prepared for the worst. We had grief counselors on campus. We had all types of support staff. We had an army of therapy dogs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Puppies,
all types of dogs.
Oh, that's amazing. But I have to say, I can see just your physical appearance and your energy, because I've seen you before, and you look like it was a very emotional day.
Yeah. It has been for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Today was the first day of my class that we, when everything happened, I was in my fourth hour class. That was the last class of that particular day. And so that's the group that we evacuated with. And so when we started school today, we started with our fourth hour classes for that purpose. So it was my first time seeing them since, Wednesday. And so it was good though. I saw some of them on Sunday when we had the reunification open house type thing. A lot of kids came out, which was great to see them, but Today, our squad was together, meaning that fourth hour group. It's one of my favorite classes, and almost all of them showed up today. I think we only had one kid absent in that particular group, so it was good to see them. And they were great. They were in high spirits and ready to talk and ready to move, like forward. So it was a long day. And it's been a long couple days leading up to it.
Yeah.
But proud of our kids. They're good kids. They're resilient and they're smart. And they are so prepared for this moment that they have to elocute themselves, to articulate their feelings and emotions, and me as a communicator and as an English teacher, I couldn't be more proud of them. So
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming here. I know at the end of the day, coming here, not easy. We're super grateful that you're here and able to share this, experience with us. And, this opens the door for a lot of conversation, about guns, about schools, about mental health care, about why these different entities were informed about this kid. And I don't know, you can't say nothing was done, but clearly not enough was done. We started a hashtag a couple weeks ago after we saw what these kids were doing, hashtag I'm with the kids, because I think what these kids are doing, to me, it just fills me up with a lot of hope. And because I see this generation, they're not haters, they're smart, they're good, and like you said, they are prepared. And to hear that from you, a person that's a part of that community and in that school and sees these kids, to hear that reinforced is it's just, to me, it's great. It's great news. But I'm going to open it up to you guys also. What do you think going forward the solution's going to be for these kind of things that keep happening in our country?
I think we had been obviously involved in different conversations recently, but I'm personally very excited and very humbled to see how these kids have emerged from this tragedy and how resilient, how tough, how determined they are. And for the first time, I personally feel real hope that they will affect change in what's happening in the United States. I see them as not taking no for an answer. I see them as believing that change is possible. And maybe some of us have become doubters or have become disenchanted with politics, but I think we are witnessing a transcendental change or movement in our nation, and it's being led by 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. Yeah. And I think it's a magical moment almost. And they have the tools, which is their passion more than anything. They're not trained politicians. They don't have specific causes. They just want other kids and themselves to be safe and to have a nation where we respect childhood and where we respect the process of development of children and where we protect them. And so I know that it's like the phoenix rising out of the ashes of the tragedy. But what we're seeing is just an amazing thing. And I'm just thankful to be able to see and be a witness to this.
Yeah, and I think we all, I think this, and I'm sure that you guys think this, a lot of times you see this big uprising right after, the key, I think, is to sustain this energy and to not let, this is a great opportunity. It's a great timing, but it's imperative that, and listen, that's one of the, causes of FelonyMiami is to bring attention to these matters, to talk about these things and to give people hopefully some tools and resources. to make some changes and to move these agendas of unity forward. Yeah.
I think I think the biggest takeaway is that you have this new this young generation. I mean, the kids at Marjory Stoneman, they were not just them, but they're inspiring kids from all over to start taking notice and start taking a stand, with the people who control government. And, it's not going to happen overnight because, even though they are applying a lot of pressure and demanding change and demanding action, we still have, in particular, the Florida legislature that is still kowtowing to the gun lobby and to the gun industry, and refusing to do meaningful change. But it's something these kids are going to remember, and they're not going to forget, and it's going to make them realize that they have the power to take them out of office and make change on their own.
Exactly.
To that point, if I could, what's unique, why everyone says this time it feels different. One reason why I think it feels different is because these kids are different. I've worked at Marjory Stoneman Douglas now. This is my third year. And so my first set of ninth graders are now juniors. My first set of sophomores are now graduating. And I have students who are leaving who come in and give me recommendation papers to say, hey, my dad just got a job in Singapore. I'm going to the American school in Singapore for a semester, and then I'll be back. So the kids who you're talking about aren't your everyday.
Right. Yeah.
These are kids who know how their parents navigate the corridors of power.
Yeah, it's a somewhat affluent area also.
Very affluent.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of smart families and people there, because I know that a lot of people from, the east part of Miami, they all migrated out that way specifically so they could get good, safe schools to put their kids into. So I do think that is one of the reasons. You're right.
They are worldly kids.
Yeah.
They are already citizens of the world, a large part of them.
Yeah.
So this school is the only school I've ever worked at that is like that. And so now when given a catalyst, they're pulling from all of those different resources and memories and funneling it in this particular direction. And it might seem as if the school is united in one viewpoint, but it isn't. But what I love about it is that those debates are happening, but they're happening based on logic and
now,
based
what kind
on
of
the
debates?
way
Debates about guns?
Debates about guns, because just as much as Parkland is affluent, it is also it's got a strong conservative group there, and a good gun culture. We have students who shoot guns, who are shooters, and so today we tried to stay away from that. We absolutely did stay away from it. I established one new rule in my room. I was like, we're going to put our politics aside when we're in the room, because we don't want to fight with each other here. No one wins when the family feuds, So, but the campus is not, homogenous like that. But what I love about it and what was so great about today is like you would never know it. They are still coming together, even though they are from different ideological backgrounds. And even though they have differences of beliefs, as an English teacher, this is what I've been teaching under Common Core in Florida is argumentation. And they are arguing the way that they've been taught. And I'm very happy about that. And I wish more of our adult arguments happened in that way. Point, counterpoint, concede, no. Instead of just, I'm in my ideological corner, you're in yours, and we can never the twain shall meet, And that's kind of where our politics is now, which is frustrating. I crave a middle somewhere,
Right. Yeah, that is the biggest challenge right now in this country, when we're, when anybody can get on a soapbox on social media and create hysteria and, spread propaganda that doesn't help either side. It just kind of makes people just back into their own corners, and as opposed to coming to the middle, like you said, and trying to understand each other and one another, and maybe you're not going to agree on everything, but I think at the end of the day, everybody will agree. Like, yeah, we need to do something so that there never is another incident like what happened at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High ever again.
Yeah, I don't think anybody disagrees that we should have safety in our schools. I mean, I don't care what your politics is. Everybody thinks, a good education and safety in your school. That one goes without saying.
If I may add a comment, I think one of the things that I see in these kids is almost a sense of they have nothing to lose. And I think when you see politicians and you see just the older generation, they're always in a sort of like a measured way, trying to not be too confrontational or trying to say the right things or the scripted thing. They don't have that. They're able to just go out and say how they feel and what they expect. And I think that has been refreshing to a lot of people. And what you have seen is that approach has already made a huge difference. We saw today how Walmart and Dick's Sporting Goods both chose not to continue to sell assault weapons. So
and to raise the age, I think.
Exactly.
Also, yeah.
So in other changes, other companies, other like the pressure. So the fact that they have so quickly able to organize and have this march on March 24th, and the fact they have the level of interest that they have generated, all because they're not afraid.
Yeah.
And I think that's refreshing.
So let me ask you guys. We'll take this around the table. What do you feel about the AR-15? Do you think we should all have access to those?
Okay, I'll start off. I've had the chance to write stories about both sides, because I've actually I've hung out with people who are for gun control, and I've also done stories on people who are probably just like the students in your school that that are shooters and enjoy shooting as a pastime, and I've definitely I don't see myself as being on either side of the equation, because I see both sides. I see I can hear the arguments of the people who own guns and have guns for a hobby. I have friends that is a hobby for them. However, I do believe that measures that these private companies are taking, like Dick's and Walmart, should be done, and that those are smart moves. Because at the end of the day, it's a responsible thing. Because at the end of the day, I don't care how you cut it. At 18, 19, 20, your brain is still forming.
Yes.
You're still like making impulsive decisions, and adding a gun to the mix is like, it just doesn't make any sense. No. And that's not saying that that's not saying that you can't
add alcohol to the mix. Right?
That's not saying that you can't be responsible with the kid and show them how to handle guns and let them have access to guns and understand gun culture. But at the same time, you got to teach them responsibility.
So yes or no for the AR-15s?
I'm sorry. We're dancing around here.
I like the input.
Sorry, we went off on a tangent there. But the AR-15, to me, it's like, I don't see how banning the AR-15 will prevent another mass tragedy. Exactly. It's very, and again, I'm just saying this, and I'm not saying this because it's like it's just because of the gun culture in America,
right? And
it's like, and it's a gun that has the only difference from like another rifle is the fact that it has a stock. A pistol grip that has a pistol grip, and it goes in. And so you go into all these debates about you get into people get lost into this debate about the mechanics of the gun, and at the end of the day, I think it's not so much about the gun; it's about making sure that the people who shouldn't have those guns get those guns.
Exactly. How about you, Daisy?
No. I am not for assault weapons being in the hands of civilians, and I can say that from my perspective of having served in the United States Army. I trained to use weapons. I'm very comfortable handling them. So it to me is there's a purpose for them, and the right people should have them, which are people who have a badge and a uniform, being police or military. I don't see why these weapons have to be in the hands of civilians, especially untrained civilians or civilians who have not gone through a rigorous process to get these weapons. If we are going to allow them, which I oppose, then at least you should have to go through some extensive background checks, through training, through sort of like a mental health evaluation.
Like a licensing process.
Exactly, and have a permit and only with certain restrictive uses. And so that's what I believe. I don't see why. I am for the Second Amendment. I do believe that people should have guns for their protection within a reasonable parameter and with the required permits and processes. But that will be like, pistols and things that are reasonable. Arming a citizenship with, assault weapon type, armory, it's not, to me, not reasonable. It's not necessary. It's making us actually more unsafe. And especially having this idea of having weapons in the hands of teacher, I think is a terrible idea.
I want to ask you this, Chris. You're a teacher, and I'm going to, besides the AR-15 question, I want to add to this question for you. Do you think teachers ought to have guns? Is that something you would sign up for?
To the AR-15 first. I consider myself to be a very moderate individual. I wouldn't, when the assault rifles ban happened in the mid-90s, I was in high school at that time. It was a big deal. It was in all the rap music. People still were able to get assault rifles. And it was kind of like, the sentiment that counted. And so I previous to everything that happened 2 weeks ago, I was right there in the middle. The thing that has changed my mind about the AR-15 and I understand it because I've been hearing that on the news, the whole thing, it's one type of a larger set and a hand grip and and all this stuff. I was a football field away with 24 kids with me trying to evacuate the school. And I heard those 6 shots and they were as loud as if it was right here. When I heard them, I flinched. And I remember in my mind, in a split second of flinching, of being like, why am I flinching? It can't possibly be, you know what I mean? Like, there's no one with a gun over here, but you could hear it. And so that, and then that's when, kids, everybody took off after that. And then it was a mad dash to get off the campus. And so after hearing that is when I was like, man, hearing something like that in that particular environment, one of these things is not like the other type deal.
Yeah,
it was
totally foreign, right?
Yeah, it shook me. I was like, whoa. And everyone, and we heard it. And there was the whole conversation that you're hearing people talking about, oh, firecrackers. Everyone was saying that because it was like, it can't possibly be
Bullets.
gunfire. It can't possibly be that.
Of course, who would think that?
If school is about to let out, somebody's playing a joke, can't possibly be, 6 shots in rapid succession like that. So banning the AR-15, here's my plan. You want to buy an AR-15. After this happened, me and my cousin went, and my cousin that's what I mean. Like, we all know my cousin is a gun guy.
Yeah.
So he's
we
a gun guy.
We all know a gun guy.
Yep.
Yes.
We all do.
And he's a teacher, to your second point. So this all happens. He calls me up. He says, cuz, I'm coming to get you. We're going to buy a gun. Right? He's like, I'm going to buy a gun. So he's my cousin. I love him. I'm like, you go buy a gun. I'll ride with you. We went to a gun shop. That day, he could have walked out of there with an AR-15 for $650. Like, the guy, we would have come back and get it 2 days. You got just a waiting period or whatever. But the point being, we could have got up, got in the car, went, put the money down.
Right.
Access to the gun 48 hours later, and that was crazy to me. And so he's of the opinion, he wants to protect himself and all of that. I would be deathly afraid after having people's children, and I've been a teacher for about 9 years now, so I'm used to having charge over people's children. But after having people's children in my care in a situation like that, I can't imagine having more guns added to the equation. I can't imagine. I know some teachers who died in that building. I know teachers who survived that situation, and having a gun and engaging in a shootout in a hallway of a school. Now, one of my good friends, Aaron Feist, the guy who died, he drove the activity bus from, I coached JV basketball at the school, and he was part of my JV team. He drove us to our away games. That was my man. And when I heard he died, and I was talking to the kids today, some of the kids saw what happened, and they were coming to tell me. And he didn't have a gun, and I wish to God he did. The SRO officer, school resource officer who didn't go in the building, trying not to judge the man, you know, crazy situation. I can't judge anybody after this. Nobody knows how to react in a situation like that. But I know my man Feist got up off his golf cart and went into that building unarmed to do whatever, and ended up sacrificing his life. And the image of him going in there unarmed bothers me. I wish Feist could have had a gun. Do I need to have a gun in a classroom? Maybe not. But the security who are on the perimeter and everything, maybe. I don't know. The kids today expressed that they were very uncomfortable with all the guns on campus. I mean, today was crazy with police and all types of police, full riot stuff, loadout, handgun, assault rifle at my chest, and the kids were coming in classes like, whoa, it is crazy.
It's freaky, yeah.
We had a meeting after school today that kind of ran long, and they're going to, you know, our principals, you know, he's talking to them like, yo, we got to put the guns.
Bring that down a little bit. Yeah, because
You're
we're not used to that.
traumatizing.
And we're not used to that in America. You know, I remember after 9/11, when I was at the airport, when the airports opened back up, seeing those guys in the airport, it's uncomfortable because you're not used. I've traveled around the world. When I'm in another country and you see that, you're like, well, yeah, okay. I mean, London. I used to go to London back when the IRA stuff was going down. And
Actually, now again, though.
Yeah,
I was
mean,
in London last year,
right.
and they were walking around with
right,
rifles.
but you're like, all right, it's London. You see them with their Uzis or whatever it is they have, and you're like, okay, but we're not used to that in this country. It's not part of our
Not at all.
Psyche, our
yeah,
culture.
so it's kind of like, what's going
And
on?
then just
here?
the last thing about arming teachers and in the hardening of schools thing is I think all of that is just so much lazy ideas.
Right.
If your solution to this problem is to give the teacher a gun, then you're still conceding the idea that someone will get an assault rifle or some weapon, someone will attack a school, there will be casualties, but hopefully this teacher with a gun can stem the tide. So you're still conceding death on some level, you know what I'm saying, if that's what you're doing. And then to harden a school, like when I was on campus today, a school should not be
Like a fortress.
Yeah, that's what I
Right.
put on my Facebook today. I drove into school today. I had to get my ID checked all these times. School shouldn't be a fortress. And that's the thing I hated most about what this kid did is he defiled our place. And that's what I didn't even really think about it like that until all of this happened, about how much I consider that institution, that school that I'm at 7.5 hours a day, like that's my place. And we don't want our places to be barracks. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you don't want your schools
Wow.
looking like prisons.
what kind of school is that? Like, what kind of school is that? When kids
not-
are doing school stuff and riding
Not conducive
skateboards.
to learning either. It's
No.
because it's happened in some of the schools in our country that they do look like prisons because of precisely this problem, and it's the studies show that it simply is not a healthy learning environment.
Yeah.
You know, for the students, and I'm sure for the teachers, it's the same thing. You know, like you said, you have to be there 7.5 hours a day, and you know you're charged with taking care of other people's children for that period of time. I mean, it's a heavy responsibility. I mean, I can't imagine what all of you guys were going through when you had to flee, you know, the building, and you started hearing those shots, and that became a reality. Like, this is happening.
Our principal today's theme was reclaiming our campus because evacuating that campus was emotional. We gave it away.
You have to leave everything behind.
we left everything. When I went back for the first time, they used to be this show on Discovery Channel called "What If Humans Left" or whatever. The world is all overgrown and whatnot. And it felt like that when you went back. It was not like things were overgrown, but like I walked in my room and there was like a deflated Valentine's Day balloon that had come down to the ground. Someone's chocolate was melted on the desk. So I walked in there and I was like, whoa, it took you all the way back there. So evacuating that campus when it was, even after we heard the gunshots and kids started running, our first instinct is all the teachers out there, because we thought it was a fire drill. We heard the fire drill. And I will say this, our school, we had been drilling safety, drilling. So everyone knew when we heard the fire, okay, get up and go. We were outside and the kids knew before us that it was something serious because they could see it on their phones, on Snapchat and on text messaging.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They knew before we did. We were outside. We thought it was a fire drill. I heard those 6 shots, and then all the teachers, we looked at each other like...
Because you didn't know it was a gun at first.
We didn't know it was a gun at first. And we're looking at each other, and the kids started booking it. And so you can imagine, I have 25 kids I'm responsible for, and I would talk to one of them today in my 4th period. Her face is burned into my memory.
Yeah.
And she was like, yours is burned into mine. She goes to take off running, and I screamed her name. I called her name.
Yeah.
Stop running. And she turned and she looked at me, and her face was a mask of terror. But she was conflicted. She's like, Mr. Mattox told me to stay. I know I should run. And she looked at me, and it kind of was like she gave me this look like, I'm sorry. And then she just
Took
booked
off.
it.
Wow.
And then one of my other former students came up to me. He's like, Mr. Mattox is real. And he showed me a video on his phone.
There was a video already.
Was that the video that came out on the news?
It was one of them. There are so many videos that have not come out. And that's the whole thing about the news aspect of it. When we evacuated, we just were evacuating with the knowledge we had at that time. If you had your cell phone, you were texting family and friends, what do you know? Because we didn't know anything.
Okay.
Now, having watched the news, we know, and that's the part that messes all of us up who are in other parts of the school. While I was doing my lesson and cutting jokes on my kids, people were already dead. By the time the fire alarm went off, people were already dead. And we were in class, and we exited out like a fire alarm, and people were already... So that whole realization of it was crazy. Like my man Feist, I'm like, so I've been thinking about that when I found out. I'm like, he was one of the first ones. And I'm like, so he was already dead, and I was just in my room oblivious. So we evacuated the campus, and it was precarious. There's a canal, and we were walking this rickety path. There's a gate here to the middle school, and we're a whole mass of people getting bottlenecked. And the kids were panicky because, there's helicopters now, and who knew where the shooter was. And then to find out that he escaped by blending in with our whole mass of kids.
Really?
That's how he got out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If this is the school, we evacuated here. This is Marjory, Stoneman, Douglas. This is the little field where we were at. We evacuated here. This is the middle school. There's a canal here and the Sawgrass Expressway. You get here, the canal bends, and this is a long walk. So we have a whole mass of kids. Then we get here, and we got to funnel in. And then they start jumping fences. They're panicking there. And so we're all in the back trying to make sure no one falls into the canal. So then by the time we got out to the road again, and we emerged onto the road, and it was in full, there were police everywhere. Helicopters, the kids were...
Then you knew from the videos that it was
we knew from
not
the
a
videos
fire.
it was real, but...
Yeah.
Not to the extent, probably.
Not to that,
yeah.
That's when you start seeing all
And
that
then
stuff.
as we were going, the kids and the technology, and then so once I realized that they were communicating with people in the building, I coach JV basketball. I also have a mentoring program I run at the school, and we all have group text. And so then I got on my phone and I was like, everybody check in. And thank God, everybody they all checked in. And I was like, whew. All my basketball players, and I had like 7 of them in that building. And I knew it. Because when we leave to go play away games, I got to go and round them up. So I was like, yo, please answer. And then some of them didn't have their phones, but then they were working together. They was like, Coach, I got Ben, or, I see so-and-so. And so...
it also brought out the best in many people, didn't it?
Yeah.
They were a team. That's what I loved about all of that. So when we came back today with my 4th hour, we took a picture in my room. We was like, yo, like, we're a squad now. Like, you can't tell us anything. We got out of here.
Survived the battle.
Yeah, no doubt.
We got out of here. We got out with everybody. My basketball players looked out for each other. They made sure everybody was... And then now hearing their stories now, and people just barely missed it. 2 minutes before he started shooting, I was in the bathroom. And then I left to go. 5 minutes before I was here. When he started shooting, I was already in the closet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You brought up the school resource officer, Officer Scott Peterson.
Yeah.
I know school resource officers in South Florida. They go through a special training. It's a special selection process. It's not just whoever. I mean, these are people that are vetted and trained. And you said don't judge him.
I'm trying not to.
Yeah, I imagine it's a difficult thing not to. And but nonetheless, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that want to judge. I'm not going to judge because I've had guns put in my face before, and I know how I reacted. And it wasn't how I thought I might react. It wasn't like a movie.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. And so, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on
I'm
this
glad
guy?
you brought that up because, I mean, that's the problem in this country. And especially with I hate to say, the people who are gun enthusiasts, even the ones that are my friends, they think that having a gun is going to give them the chance to play,
Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis, and yeah, exactly, and Die Hard.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're going to be Jack McClane,
Right.
and we don't know exactly what's going to happen when we get into a situation like that. Unless we have the proper training, unless we've been to war.
Yeah.
And
I flinched like a turtle with his head in his shell a football field away. Let alone
In the same room.
if you're in the same room.
Yeah.
so just going back, I mean, the whole good guy with a gun, I believe, is a fallacy. It's not.
I agree.
It's not something that is true. It's something you see in Hollywood. Something you see that you can play on a video game. But when it's real life, I mean, we saw it wasn't just. I mean, like you don't even have to look at what happened in Parkland. I mean, we can go back last year to what happened at Pulse nightclub.
Yeah.
There was a situation. There were police officers there, and they didn't go in either because they didn't know what they were going to encounter.
Or they didn't even know exactly what was going on.
Right,
Like
exactly.
you said, I mean,
Yeah.
this guy, again, I happen to agree, don't judge so quickly because, maybe he thought it was over there or over there. Was it firecrackers? Is it a fire drill? He wasn't given the alert like, there's an active shooter in hallway, 3B, go do your duty. So, I agree. But, I mean, you've been trained with weapons. You were in the military. I mean, how do you think you would have reacted in that situation?
At the end of the day, we are humans, and we, especially in conflictive situations, things that are unexpected. You think that you've got it, and you're all, ready, but maybe you're not. And I agree with let's not judge. That said, I think the argument of the good guy with a gun has been advanced to support a specific movement.
And to sell more guns.
Exactly. So I don't believe in that. I believe that if you don't have the weapon, it's a better option. I mean, I don't think there's one thing that can cure what's going on right now. I think it's a multitude of things, but certainly minimizing access to gun has to be one of those things. And we saw that the good guy with a gun argument didn't work in this particular case because there was a good guy with a gun, and he panicked or he misunderstood the situation. For whatever reason, it just didn't work.
Yeah,
and so as a result, we have a lot of people that were killed, and we now go to the argument, of course, of what is it, this or that. Of course, we also know that access to mental health is very, very important. And I was trained. I'm a trained social worker, and I was actually I have a master's in counseling education, so I was also trained as a school counselor. So, what we have seen in the last decade, at least in Florida, is a massive defunding of resources to schools, both in mental health access, school counselors, school supportive personnel. I mean, Florida schools have been decimated, basically, of funding.
The mental health care system in this state, for sure. I mean, in most of the country, what's unfortunately happened, according to the information that I've sought out, is that our police forces have become the de facto mental health care providers, and they're not. They're not mental health care providers.
Not only our police officers, but our emergency rooms and our teachers have become the catch-all for all societal ills that are not being addressed through proper funding or through proper programs.
Yeah, and I think part of it is, and this is one of the whole reasons that we started this podcast, Felony Miami, is to shine a light and turn the volume up on these things that should not be stigmatized. Look, there's a lot of emotional illness in this country right now, and there's a lot of mental illness. And the problem is, everybody wants it to be like you were saying, like a movie. And, it's not a movie. Everybody knows somebody that's going through some kind of a mental illness. Yeah. Everybody. It's just like everybody has somebody in their family. But, today's kids, they're not haters on that. Oh, yeah, so's gay. Next. They want to get married to that guy. Next. They don't care. So, I believe that these kids have that same thought process with mental and emotional and spiritual health issues, because it is an issue in this country right now, clearly.
But I have to tell you, I worked as a social worker at a emergency room in this city. And if you were someone that was brought in with mental health problems and you had no insurance, I basically had no place to send you. So the reality is that unless you have insurance that covers mental health services, there are no public resources. There are not places that you can send people for counseling. And even for those few that exist, then you're talking about a waiting list of weeks, months sometimes. So access to mental health services is basically non-existent. And by the way, even if you have insurance, now we have the insurance companies limiting, you can only have so many visits. 20 sessions, you can only have this. It's all about, again, it's not anybody wanting to really pay for the care that it's really required.
Yeah, and what happens also is they medicate these kids. Mm-hmm. They're medicated
because
from when they're little.
Because it's the easy way out.
Yeah, they medicate them from when they're little. Then all of a sudden they become teenagers. They get off the medication. They don't see a real world reality in front of them, and you add the guns to that, and it becomes
a lethal mix.
Yeah, it becomes a disaster. Mm-hmm. It just, I mean, the whole thing with the good guy with a gun. Just jumping back to that for a second. I like your opinion on that. I like all of your opinions on that. I just am curious. If it's not going to be a good guy with a gun, and it's not going to be banning guns, what's it going to be? What's it going to actually be? Is it more mental health care? Is it an age thing if you make the age 21? Is it licensing? You have to have a license to drive a car. You can't just get in the car. You have to wear your seatbelt. It's the law. You have to have insurance. It's the law.
Well, I mean, I think it's a combination of everything. It's like looking at, again, gun restrictions. Like, again, if you're 19, you can't. I mean, just like a handgun, you can't buy it until you're 21. I mean, any firearm, regardless of what it is. Another thing that you just mentioned, insurance. I mean, we got to get insurance on cars, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's just a chance is that you might get in an accident, you might even kill somebody.
It's the law.
And somebody's gonna have to pay for it. Yeah. So why shouldn't you carry insurance for your weapons? If they're used, in a commission of a crime, or if they end up killing somebody, I mean,
You'd think they would love that in America. It's a whole new industry. It would be a whole new capital
Right.
industry. Hey,
right?
gun insurance.
And going back to licensing, I think one of the problems that we have in the state is that also there's not enough funding for the agency, the Department of Agriculture, that is in charge of issuing concealed weapons permits, and I don't think there's enough of a, how should I put it, resources put in to find it. I mean, there's no reason why like Nicholas Cruz can walk into a gun shop and be able to pull a gun off the shelf, knowing his background, knowing how many times the police went to his house, knowing what he was posting on social media. If there's a way for gun sellers to have that information, you guarantee they're not going to sell a gun. Because I mean, that's one thing.
Jump in 1 second.
Yeah.
And because you're right, and you've said a couple of ways here. You said resources. We need more resources, because what it all comes down to, and this is the third rail that no one, and why things cannot get done, is the difference between small governments and a government of appropriate size. To do that, to make sure the background check system is fully dataed up, in that everyone has access to it, there needs to be someone who's responsible for that. Do you want to put it in the hands of a private company? Maybe you could do that and privatize it. To have, I don't know, maybe I'm just a Primrose Path type of guy, but then I'm letting everybody's mad, the FBI didn't do this. Everybody. Can you imagine how many tips the FBI gets? To run down every tip, you need resources to do that. The BSO guys who didn't necessarily, they followed up with, and this is because I work with
the
kids
Broward County Sheriff's Office.
Broward County Sheriff's Office. I work with kids in the school system. I've worked with several kids, not necessarily school shooter potential, but there's a lot of troubled kids. Yeah. And the school is only equipped to do but so much. When you get a kid like Nicholas Cruz, who in our school, we did everything we could do, he gets expelled, and there is no transition. There is no, hey, we couldn't handle this bad apple, here you go, police or whoever.
Right, yeah.
He's now in the world.
Just let out, yeah.
Just
like out into
just
the
like
wild.
anybody else.
Yeah.
But so how do you track that? And it all comes down to infrastructure. Some people say bureaucracy. If you don't want to have a larger government, then you got to be willing to privatize it. Either way, you're going to have to pay taxes. And these are the arguments that we cannot mend in our country. That argument about taxes or no taxes, come on.
Right.
There's no way you're, So if you really want to do the background check thing properly, nationwide, who's funding it?
Yeah, listen, I think anything on guns, you guys tell me your thoughts on this, but I think anything to be effective would need to happen at the federal level. I don't think it can happen on the state level to have any effect. And I go back to the thing that you mentioned earlier, Frank, that some of these companies just taking personal responsibility is huge. And I think, listen, I don't think anybody would disagree that more personal responsibility is a good thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can speak for myself as a human being on this planet for 50 plus years, that most of my biggest problems, most of my biggest troubles in my own personal life have occurred when I did not have my own personal responsibility in line, when I didn't take responsibility for my own actions. And when I have, things work out right. When I face these things and deal with them up front, because look, bottom line is, this is an issue that has been being swept under the rug. Oh, tragedy. Oh, it's horrible. Thoughts and prayers, out of the thing. What is that? Seriously? Okay, we're getting the facts, everyone. The fax line hasn't rang here in 2 years. But, and for those of you who are younger, a fax machine is it's this machine that sends
A text.
a text.
a line
Exactly.
every
It's a first generation text machine.
It's a first generation texting device. Next show, we're going to talk about checks. So anyway, sorry for that interruption. But I mean, listen, bottom line is personal responsibility. This country's been sweeping this issue under the rug. You know, every time we have a tragedy, people raise up their voices, and then it seems to just, quiet down and go away, just like everything else does. But like every one of you has said today at this table, there seems to be something a little different this time. And I think it is the kids. I think it's the kids that experience this firsthand. I think it's because these kids are kids that have some privilege, and they're not. And it seems like they're not going to squander it. It seems like they're going to take this privilege that they've been given, and they're going to try to put it to good use.
With the privilege, because privilege sometimes has a connotation that's negative. I think what I was trying to say earlier, because it is a certain amount of privilege, but they understand how government works.
Right, and with great privilege comes great responsibility.
You understand? Yes.
Yes.
And
They have
because
had enough
of
education to understand how the system works already.
and education from school, but also from the communities in which they live. They live next door to state representatives. You understand? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, they see how it works.
Yes, they
and
know
that these are people,
and they understand how. I'll give you one, and I was like, one of the kids at the town hall. He's talking to Marco Rubio, and he gave him a valid question. He says, we have enough people in here. If all these people gave, say, $10, we probably could replace whatever the NRA is donating to you. So at that point, his argument is no longer the emotional, hey, don't you feel bad? Kids are getting shot. His argument is no longer, we shouldn't do this because it's bad. Because of where he's come from, he understands.
Right.
Oh, if the thing is money, well, I can get you some money.
Right.
If money is what the issue is, then
We're going to get you some.
we can get you some money as long as you agree not to take the NRA money. So
I get the other side of it also, because I've had conversations with people that believe in what the NRA's charter is all about, and that it's the ultimate check and balance. We have our three branches of government that are supposed to check each other and our how it's supposed to work. But as Dr. B would say, one of our FelonyMiami contributors, he'd say no. The guns are the people's ultimate check and balance. And you know what? I want to have the right in case the government gets out of control. I see both sides of it.
Well, the ironic thing about that argument is that, they're like, most people that will, say that I want my gun to keep government in check,
right,
are the ones that, will put you down for kneeling during the national anthem, because you're not supporting the troops.
Yeah.
Well, I think what I see wrong with the NRA issue is that they have, in essence, terrorized the conversation about guns. It's almost like you can't even have that conversation. It's not that they don't have a right to advance their agenda, and they should, but it's the fact that we can. Because, and I'm telling you from for example, the Tallahassee perspective, you can't even talk about gun control. Okay,
you were a state representative.
Correct.
Did you ever have this actual conversation?
Yes, I did. And the fact is that in Tallahassee, even mentioning the word gun was like you can't. That was like a prohibited argument. And any kind of legislation that had to do with guns would never see the light of day. It would never come to the floor. It would never go to a committee because everybody seemed to be afraid of the NRA. And the NRA lobbyist, Marianne Hammer, and she seemed to have this power and hold over people. Yeah. And so that is where I have a problem. What I believe is if you want to put forward a piece of legislation on gun control, you should be able to bring it to the floor. Now, people should vote however they want, for or against it. Being that the majority likely are pro-gun, it's not going to pass. But we owe the people of the state of Florida the ability to have the representative bring forth their ideas and truly represent them. And that is not what's happening in Tallahassee. No.
What the great success of the NRA is, and I say this as a writer, is they have told the country a fantastic story. Yeah. They have tied gun ownership to being intrinsically American.
Patriotism.
To patriotism, to nationalism, to it is part of your Americanness to, fight against tyranny. And that's their greatest, because they've told that story. And, you hear people all the time, and it's like, well, even when you read it, for it's about a militia and so and so and so, and it's, it's not necessarily clear that it means that me and you can bear arms, maybe. However you want to spin it, they've told a fantastic story. And then the last piece I'll say about when people are like, oh, I want to, just in case the government gets crazy, Andre 3000 has a lyric on his very first album with Outkast. He said, man, you're talking about those gats. They made those gats. They got some shit that'll blow out your back from where they stay at.
Exactly.
So
right.
You're gonna
and I brought that same argument up. Like you're not gonna go up against the U.S. military.
Yeah, you're not gonna win a war against drones.
You're not gonna. It's not gonna happen.
You and your front yard with an AR-15 against.
The thing about the NRA is they've been around since the 1870s, right? I mean, it's not a new thing, and their story their whole narrative has changed throughout the years. In the 40s, 50s, 60s, it was all about hunting and the right to have your gun to go hunting and hunting. And then in the 70s and 80s, when we had incredibly bad crime, their whole narrative changed to you need a gun to protect yourself because they're coming for you. They're going to come and get you. And now their whole narrative is, keep your hands off of my gun. The famous Charlton Heston, from like Cold Dead Hands, which is, listen, it's almost like this one group is like their own little government, this NRA. And it seems, now you see what's happening. Delta, they got a big fight going on.
In Georgia,
in Georgia. I mean, these people have politicized that whole thing. They were asking for a tax break on some fuel. They wanted to make it like they were not going to give them the tax break, but they were fighting them a week before that, saying, we don't want to give it to them anyway. The Republicans were saying, we don't want to give this to these people. Right. So now they jumped on and said, hey, let's say no just to politicize it. So that's bullshit also. Bottom line is this. Some of these other companies are acting responsible. They're disassociating themselves from the NRA. How long is that going to last? Is it going to last a month?
Well,
6 months? A year? Are they gone for good?
On that particular, what you see right there, at least in my opinion, is the difference between capitalism and government. Walmart, Dick's, Delta, as much of that's them being responsible, it's also them looking at their market and looking at their demographic and saying, it's beneficial for us to be on this side of this.
Capitalism.
It's capitalism.
Of course,
right. It's pure, and which is not a bad thing.
No.
That's one of the reasons why capitalism can work, especially when paired with democracy.
It's a huge
is because
driver
if the democracy fails in some regard, the market might be able to push,
correct it.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's why you got cap and trade and all these ideas and all of that. Yeah. So, to your question, how long will it last? If the pressure continues, if our students at Marjory Stoneman Douglas can continue it, can keep the energy alive, the more the pressure maintains, the better chance you have of more companies saying, hey, look, we're not going to sell. You want to buy your gun, buy it, just buy it, somewhere else. If Dick's to say that, I think they're like the second or third or something.
Walmart and Dick's are pretty much the top two, actually.
Yeah. That's huge.
Huge companies, yeah.
And let me tell you something else. I think they also realize that we have, I don't know how many millions of kids who are now 17 who are going to be eligible to vote in the next midterm elections, and definitely a few more millions who are going to be able to vote in 2020. Yeah. And they realize that, they're coming because they are now energized. We know that traditionally your lowest voting block has been the younger folks.
Right. That seems to
be changing, seniors
have
been the more traditional, more reliable voters. But now we see a new generation. There's saying, wait a minute, I have a say in this, and it's going to be with my vote. Yeah. And if that doesn't send a real and strong message to everyone that these kids are coming, I don't know what else will.
Yeah, well, I hope that we can help to keep these kids motivated. I really do, because I've always been civic-minded and tried to get people. I'm one of those guys that I go out and during campaign season, and I stand in the corner and I register people to vote. It's just something I feel like I like to do. It's one of the very few things that I do. And I've seen a generation of people completely disenchanted and disconnected and not even caring to be involved or wanting to know what's involved. And those are the people that are like in their late 20s and 30s right now. Mm-hmm. And it's that generation that that they just, because they didn't want to be involved. And that's one of the things that I'm thrilled about with this next generation of kids that are coming up to voting age. They seem like they want to be involved. And, listen, America was built on activism. This country was built on activism. It's all grassroots stuff. You're not going to see big changes from the top down. It never happens that way in this country. It always happens from the ground up. And
let me tell you, these kids have killer social media skills.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the access that they have to communication is like one no one had ever had before. So they are utilizing that. They know they're very skilled at it. They're using it, and that is definitely advancing their agenda, because in the past, different groups will have to then find money, like the NRA or other groups, to put out their message in media, television, whatever. And that was costly, and it required organization, it required bureaucracy. They don't need that. They can just go straight to their Facebook or their Instagram or Twitter, whatever, and put out something. It goes viral, and there, boom, you have it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody. This has been an incredible episode of Felony Miami. It's a conversation that needs to continue.
Absolutely.
And I just want to thank everyone for their thoughts and their input today. It's been enlightening. And Chris, thank you so much for getting real and showing some emotion here today.
I'm so tired of crying and being weepy, man. I haven't cried this much my entire life.
Let it out. Listen, if more of us in this country were okay to show our emotions and cry every now and then, I think we'd be a whole lot better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Daisy, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. Really, really appreciate it. And Frank, we respect and appreciate your work.
I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you so much for being here. I want to, for all of us here at Felony Miami, extend our condolences to the victims and the families and everybody involved in this horrible Parkland situation, and also extend our hope and enthusiasm for you all to continue to make a change and to keep this movement going forward. For Felony Miami, I'm Joe Stone. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Well, it's early in the morning. Then when I ride, Lordy Mama. Well, it's early in the morning. Then when I ride, well, it's early in the morning.